Modern armies are firing million-dollar missiles at drones that can cost less than a car. A cheap drone enters the sky. The radar sees it. The launcher fires. The interceptor hits. The drone disappears. The army wins. And that is the problem. Because every successful intercept burns something expensive, scarce, and slow to replace. The missile works. The system works. The target survives. But one interceptor is gone forever. Now imagine the next wave is not one drone. It is 10. Then 50. Then a mix of drones, decoys, rockets, and missiles arriving together. The question is not whether the missile can hit the drone. It can. The question is what happens after it does. Because the defender can win the interception and still lose the economics. This is not really a video about whether air defense works. It is a video about what happens when a working defense system gets emptied. Because the attacker does not always need to destroy the shield. It only needs to make the shield spend itself down. Every launch creates a cost. Every interception consumes inventory. Every successful shot makes the next shot harder to sustain. And that changes the logic of modern air defense. The launcher is only the visible part. Behind the launcher is a warehouse. Behind the warehouse is a factory. Behind the factory is a supply chain. And if any part of that chain is too slow, the shield starts to disappear. That is why a missile battery can look powerful and still be one salvo away from becoming useless. The radar may still work. The launcher may still work. The crew may still be ready. But if the missiles are gone, the shield is empty. So, the real question is not who has the most advanced launcher. The real question is who can make the next missile. Cheap drones scale faster than expensive air defense. One drone is not the problem. One drone can be detected. One drone can be tracked. One drone can be shot down. But a swarm changes the math. 10 drones force decisions. 50 drones create pressure. A mixed wave of drones, decoys, rockets, and missiles forces the defender to spend fast. And this is where the fight starts to change. It is no longer just about whether the system can intercept the target. It is about how many times it can afford to do it. The drone is cheap. The response is not. A modern air defense battery cannot answer a threat with half a missile. It cannot fire a cheaper version in the moment. It needs a real interceptor, a rocket motor, a seeker, guidance electronics, a warhead, a trained crew, and a supply chain behind it. So every launch creates a cost. The attacker risks cheap systems. The defender burns scarce missiles. A drone that costs thousands can force the launch of an interceptor that costs hundreds of thousands. Or even more than $1 million depending on the system. That does not mean the missile fails. It may work perfectly. The drone disappears. The defended site survives. The radar did its job. The launcher did its job. The interceptor did its job. But one missile is gone. Every launch turns a full battery into a smaller shield. And if the next wave is larger, the defender has less room to respond. A missile battery can look powerful and still be one salvo away from becoming useless. Because the attacker does not always need to destroy the system. It only needs to make the system fire. More drones mean more launches. More launches mean fewer interceptors. Fewer interceptors mean the next wave becomes more dangerous. That is the first trap. The defender can win the engagement and still move one step closer to empty. And this is where the fight leaves the sky and enters the warehouse. The missile disappears in seconds. Replacing it can take months. That is the real bottleneck. Air defense fails in the warehouse before it fails in the sky. The visible part of the system is the launcher. The dramatic part is the intercept. The impressive part is the radar tracking threats in real time. But the limiting part is behind all of it, the inventory. Once an interceptor is fired, it is gone forever. And making another one is not like making another bullet. A bullet can be produced at huge volume. An interceptor is a precision industrial product. It needs a motor to fly, a seeker to find the target, guidance electronics to correct its path, a warhead to destroy the threat, propellant to launch, testing to prove it works, certification before it can be delivered. Then it needs final assembly, transport, storage, maintenance, and reload logistics. That takes factories. And factories do not scale overnight. A government can approve more defense spending quickly, but money does not instantly create trained workers. It does not instantly create qualified suppliers. It does not instantly create explosives capacity. It does not instantly create electronic supply. And it does not instantly create certified missile assembly lines. This is why the battlefield can consume faster than industry can produce. A drone swarm can arrive tonight. A replacement missile may take months to move through the industrial system. That gap is the trap. The real bottleneck is not the launcher, it is the factory behind it. And once the factory becomes the bottleneck, the battle is no longer only about intercepting threats. It is about replenishment. If one side can keep sending cheap drones, and the other side cannot replace expensive interceptors fast enough, the defender becomes weaker even when it keeps succeeding. Every successful intercept makes the sky safer for a moment, but it also makes the stockpile smaller. And once the warehouse becomes the battlefield, power moves to whoever can refill it. If you cannot reload, you depend on someone who can. That is where air defense becomes a power structure. Owning the launcher is not the same as controlling the system. A country may operate advanced air defense. It may have trained crews. It may have radars, launch vehicles, and command systems. But if the missiles are running out, the real question becomes simple. Who can provide the next interceptor? The launcher is not the weapon, the stockpile is. And the stockpile depends on production capacity. Countries with deep inventories can keep firing longer. Countries with missile factories can replenish faster. Countries with rocket motor capacity, electronic supply chains, and defense industrial scale can sustain the shield. Countries without those things face a different reality. They can shoot down drones today, but they may not be able to replace the missiles tomorrow. That creates dependence. Dependence on foreign factories. Dependence on export approvals. Dependence on production queues. Dependence on suppliers that may already be overloaded. Dependence on countries with their own military priorities. The country that cannot replace interceptors does not control its own air defense. This is why cheap drones matter beyond the battlefield. They expose who has real industrial depth and who only has expensive systems with limited reloads. They shift power from the front line to the production line, from the launcher to the warehouse, from the missile battery to the factory. The actors who can produce, replenish, and finance interceptors gain leverage over everyone who cannot. That is the consequence. Modern air defense is not just about shooting threats down. It is about whether an army can afford to keep shooting. This is where the system becomes clear. $1 million missile can stop a cheap drone. That is not the weakness. The weakness is having to do it again, and again, and again. Modern air defense can be tactically successful and economically vulnerable at the same time. The radar works, the launcher works, the interceptor works, but the system still breaks if the factory cannot keep up. That is the bottleneck. The battlefield consumes in seconds. The factory replaces in months, and in that gap power shifts. It shifts away from the launcher, away from the radar, away from the interception itself. and toward whoever can produce, finance, and deliver the next interceptor. The factory becomes part of the battlefield. The side that reloads faster controls the sky, and the country that cannot replace interceptors does not fully control its own air defense. Modern air defense can win battles and still lose the economic war. Cheap drones reveal something most armies would rather not admit. The most advanced air defense system is only as strong as the missiles behind it. And those missiles depend on money, access, and industrial capacity. Money decides who can afford to keep firing. Access decides who can get the next interceptor. Control belongs to whoever can produce, replenish, and sustain the system under pressure. That is why cheap drones matter far beyond the battlefield. They expose who has industrial depth. They expose who only has limited reloads. And they expose who becomes dependent when the stockpile starts to disappear. When the last interceptor is gone, the launcher may still be there, the radar may still be there, the crew may still be there, but the shield is empty. The missile matters, but the next missile matters more. Modern air defense is no longer just about shooting threats down. It is about whether an army can afford to keep shooting. And this is the industry code.